It's time for Sean Payton and George Payton to go shopping. The NFL trade deadline is only a week away. Next Tuesday, 2 o'clock. All trades need to be done by then. And this year could be pretty active. We've seen a trend in the NFL of more and more trades in the week leading up to the deadline. Last week, there were 11 trades in the lead up to the deadline. The year before, there were 8 trades in the lead up to the deadline, which means about half of the NFL's teams are getting involved in a deal on one side or the other. And the Broncos figure to be pretty active. You know, for the first time in a long time, the Broncos should be true buyers. They are sitting at 6-2, which has kind of been the magic number in recent years. If you look at the last 8 teams to go to either the AFC or the NFC championship game, 6 of the 8 were 6-2 or better after week 8. So they're on that cutoff, and that means they're in a group with teams like the Colts and the Patriots. You could include the Bills at 5-2 if you wanted to, but it's on that short list of AFC teams in prime position to make a run, so why not add one more piece? We should say this. There are some rumors swirling that the Broncos are going to be interested in making a deal. Diana Russini of The Athletic saying the Broncos are monitoring the tight end market in particular. And as of this morning, Tuesday morning, we got news that there's a Nate Adkins injury that could add a little bit more urgency to that need. Could be looking for some sort of blocking help. They put claims in on a couple of tight ends, but didn't win either. Seems like some moves going to be made at tight end, and because they weren't able to land the waiver claims, maybe they shoot a little bit higher in a trade. You also had Jonathan Jones saying that perhaps the biggest contender for a receiver is the Broncos. Again, a little pushback in terms of that rumor, but we're starting to see reporters talk about the Broncos. Now we get to jump into who exactly they could be looking at. We're going to start here by looking at some of the things that the Broncos have to trade, kind of the situation that they're sitting in right now. And cap space wise, they've got about $12 million left this year, which is more than enough to get a deal done. It's only the 19th most in the NFL, but it's not going to prevent them from making any of the deals that we're going to talk about today. Next year, 12th most cap space, about $65 million based on the estimate from SpotRack. It depends on how the salary cap changes, how much money the Broncos actually have to run over. Long term, maybe just a little bit tighter, but nothing that you need to worry about. Financially, they have every opportunity to get a deal done. Then you look at the picks. This year, they've got the bonus 4th round pick from trading Devon Bailey to the Saints. They're out their 6th rounder because of the John Franklin Myers deal. Next year, they've got all of their own picks, though, plus the 7th rounder they get from the Saints in the Devon Bailey deal. In 2028 and beyond, all their own picks, nothing to worry about there. Going back to the cap space, you look at kind of where that money could go. You've got the $65 million to spend. If you want to keep John Franklin Myers, you probably got to pay him about $15 million, about double what he's getting now. Alex Singleton probably done, you would think, but you never know. They could bring him back. Wouldn't cost any more than he cost this year at about $6 million. You will have to pay a kicker. Maybe it's a little raise for Will Lutz, but nothing too drastic. Got guys like Malcolm Roach who you could want to extend, but it would mean paying them more. Same thing with Justin Strnad. Same thing with J.K. Dobbins. Same thing with Luke Wattenberg. But if you wanted to keep the majority of those guys, you would still have room for an addition. You could make that addition after the season if you wanted to in free agency. Why not make a deal right now? I ran through a bunch of the tape to figure out who the Broncos should go after. I watched so you didn't have to. I watched everything from Garrett Wilson, everything from Mark Andrews, every target for Brian Thomas Jr. over the past 2 years. And this is what I came up with. I've got a top 10 here, the 10 guys who I would be taking a look at. Number 10 on that list is Breece Hall. If you liked the idea of going and drafting Omarion Hampton with a 1st round pick this year, then you should really like the idea of trading a day 2 pick for Breece Hall, who's a very similar, strong and fast. And if you give him a crease, he's going to be gone through that. Tough to bring down with an arm tackle. Maybe a little bit redundant, though, with a running back like J.K. Dobbins. A couple guys who really thrive between the tackles. Now, J.K. Dobbins has a history of injuries, and we'll knock on wood when we bring that up. But as of now, you don't have great insurance for him in terms of the other guys that you have on the roster. R.J. Harvey, some explosive plays, but specifically on those tosses, specifically when you throw him the ball on a screen. Between the tackles, still kind of finding his footing. Tyler Bidet, not a guy who's built for that. Julian McLaughlin, not a guy who's built for that. Both productive players who could be useful for the Broncos down the stretch, but nobody who in playoff football can grind out 3-4 ugly yards consistently. I had the dark thought that I kind of miss Audric Estime as that sort of insurance, but we'll move on from that. Breece Hall would provide that insurance. He's also obviously a very productive player in the final year of his contract, so you'd have to figure out after the year if you want to keep him, and good enough that you probably have to give a decent pick up to the Jets if you want to land him. But the 2-man duo of J.K. Dobbins, Breece Hall, there's some nice stuff that could come from that. And it obviously, like I said, provide that insurance if you lose J.K. Dobbins. Number 9, this is the only real target that I'm going off the board for. All these other guys probably make a lot of sense. This guy, I felt like we needed some sort of inclusion of a defensive player. So I'm throwing Trayvon Diggs in there. Why? Because he's going to be pretty cheap. He's on a team-friendly contract. There are no guarantees after this year, so it doesn't really work out. And it seems like the Cowboys are done with Trayvon Diggs. You know, they traded Micah Parsons before the season. That was Trayvon Diggs' best friend on the team, and he hasn't really been all that locked in this year. It's shown up on the field. He hasn't played all that well, but you go back and watch that game against the Packers. Sure, the Cowboys gave up 40 points to the Packers in that game. Trayvon looked pretty good, though. I think there's something there. He's not a scheme fit for what the Cowboys are doing. You line Trayvon up and ask him to play some man coverage, I think there's a chance that he provides some pretty good coverage, especially when you ask him to play the number 2 role, to play opposite Pat Surtain. Now, maybe this is a little bit more urgent with Pat Surtain on the sideline for, I don't know, maybe a month. We'll see how it actually plays out. Unfortunately, Trayvon Diggs out for at least another week or two with some injuries of his own, which could put a little kink into this. But if you were looking to upgrade the defense, I think this is the spot where I would look. And I'm a Riley Moss believer. I think he's playing well. But if you're Sean Payton, you say, hey, we've got the most penalized player in the NFL. What if we try getting him off the field by potentially reviving the career of Trayvon Diggs? I don't know. It might be worth a flyer. And like I said, he'd be cheap. Number 8, getting into the tight ends, Mark Andrews. Now, Mark Andrews from the Ravens is in the final year of his deal. Isaiah Likely, the other tight end with the Ravens, also in the final year of his deal. Because of that, you could see the Ravens making a move to get something in return for one of these guys, since they probably won't re-sign both. Andrews has become a pretty decent blocker. I wouldn't say he's a better blocker than Adam Troutman at this point, but that's kind of what the bar is. You know, assuming Nate Adkins is going to be available at some point in the near future, you've got your blocking tight end in Adkins, who's one of the best at that. You've got your receiving tight end in Evan Ingram, who, despite a little bit of a slow start in Denver, statistically is still one of the better receiving tight ends this year. And we know he's capable of more as he continues to kind of fit into this offense. What you're looking for is a guy who could be more versatile in between those two, give you some options, some different looks from some 2 tight end sets. And I think Mark Andrews could be that guy. You know, it's tough to go big game shopping at tight end when you're looking for somebody with that versatility, because there just aren't a lot of them. The names we hear, the guys who are expensive are the receivers. You know, Adam Troutman, more than 2/3 of his snaps are as a blocker. Mark Andrews, that's not the case. It's about the opposite. Veteran, though, provides some zone beating ability, still some man beating ability, and just the versatility to run some bootlegs with him that could work out. Number 7, another tight end. I've got TJ Hawkinson in front of Mark Andrews. You know, because of the injury, his days of being a 900-yard receiver, which he was in back-to-back years, might be over, but he's still a productive player in a lot of different ways. And similar to Andrews in that, you know, he is more of a receiver than a blocker based on how he's used now, but very competent blocker, and in particular is a weapon as a chip and release receiver. You see him help out with a tackle, kind of leak out late, find some space, and just keep the offense on schedule with some easy outlet passes for the quarterback. I'm a big fan. I wonder if another year removed from the injury, he could keep getting better from here, but you know, we'll see. First receiver on the list comes in at number 6. We've got Chris Olave of the Saints. He belongs in the slot, and I wonder whether Sean wants a true slot receiver. It's not something we've seen from him a lot. He just doesn't really use those. He wants the big receivers, the big targets, the guys who can block maybe a little bit more than Olave can. But Chris Olave is smart. He knows how to sit in gaps in coverage. He can take a hit. He's got good hands. The double moves help him get open deep. The speed out in particular from the slot, just incredible, so productive, and he's able to work off of that. Could help the Broncos stay on schedule. Again, though, is he a perfect fit? I'm not sure, and the price tag would be pretty high, you would think. Number 5, Joel Bitonio of the Browns, a future Hall of Famer, potentially in his final year in the NFL. If not, he's kind of coming down to the wire. That's why he might be available. Seems like Wyatt Teller, the other guard from the Browns, right guard, might be easier to land. Bitonio's the better player. When you go back and look at what he's doing this year, maybe not Hall of Fame in his prime type stuff, but not far off. I'm a believer in Alex Palshevsky. I think he's been really good since his first training camp with the Broncos. And you look at what he did against the Cowboys this week, getting downfield, making blocks on linebackers, 10 yards downfield. It's opening up running lanes and the wide zone stuff that the Broncos want to run. At the point of attack, though, Bitonio's a little bit stronger. He's a vet, and he's also pretty good downfield as well. If you're looking to upgrade that offensive line to patch things up while Ben Powers is gone, Bitonio's the guy. Number 4, we've got Brian Thomas of the Jags. You know, last year, Brian Thomas, one of the NFL's most productive receivers, 1,400 yards essentially. This year, not so much. Some bad throws, they're not using him well. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. For Brian Thomas, the second-year receiver, it's a size-speed combo that's special. Nothing else all that special. You know, he's not going to moss defenders in a way you'd expect from a guy who's 6'4", but he's fast. You hit him in stride on a slant, he's going to be off and running. I don't want to compare him to Demaryius because that's just not fair, but there's a little bit of that there. He's starting to feel things out against zone coverage. He's hitting windows, and unfortunately, Trevor Lawrence isn't getting the ball on time. I think that of all the receivers on this list, most explosive, big-time potential, 1,500 yard potential long-term from Thomas, but only fourth on the list because there are better options right now. At number 3 on the list, the second running back I've got here, Devon Achane of the Dolphins. The speed is undeniable. The speed is special, and I think he fits pretty well with what the Broncos want to do. We've seen the crack tosses really open up. There are very few players who are as productive as Devon Achane is on that play in particular. Now, you've seen RJ Harvey actually score the touchdowns on those recently. So what does that mean? Are you willing to find a guy who's going to take snaps away from Harvey at this point? It's tough to do. But in terms of Joker qualities, in the NFL, you won't find many guys who fit that role better than Achane. When you look at the snaps that he takes in the slot, there's stuff that you can like, some stuff that fits really well. You know, I looked into Alvin Kamara. He's not the same guy that he was last time he played with Sean, but I think that if you look at Devon Achane through the lens of a Reggie Bush type, I think that there's something there, and I think that he could be a perfect fit for a Sean Payton offense. The speed is special. I think it could go really well. Maybe it doesn't provide the insurance, though. You're still wondering between the tackles without Dobbins what you look like. Maybe you just need to bank on Dobbins staying healthy. Number 2, we've got Jalen Waddle, a smaller receiver, but freaky fast. Freaky fast. You don't see many guys like him. When you get to the playoffs and it's all about man coverage on defense, you want a guy who's able to beat that man coverage consistently, and Jalen Waddle on those drag routes does that. Now, down the field, could you hope for a little bit more for somebody who has his skills? Probably. He's not going to make a bunch of crazy catches outside of his frame. You want to give him the ball and let him go. He's shifty. He's a decent route runner. Maybe has a little bit more in the tank there, but if you're looking for an 1,100-yard receiver who's pretty unique, Jalen Waddle's your guy. Maybe just a little bit redundant with the Marvin Mims, but just the level of development that Waddle has, it's different. Again, a man beater in the playoffs is worth its weight in gold. This might be the guy. The other guy, though, number 1 on this list, Garrett Wilson of the Jets. The Broncos saw him recently. Garrett Wilson is shifty. He's a great separator against any sort of coverage. He doesn't waste many opportunities. He catches passes, and unlike the other receivers on this list, he'll go make some contested catches. He'll make tough catches for you. Not the most physical player. He isn't that big, but he's fast when you get him in stride. He might not have the wiggle to make guys miss consistently, but just the reliability, the man-beating ability. You know, there's something in there that might remind you of an Emmanuel Sanders. That's why Garrett Wilson is the number 1 target on this list. That's going to do it for today. We've got a week to see where this is going to go. Stay tuned because I think the Broncos are going to make a deal.